quiet intuition that told him when someone was just needed to be heard. Karl always moved through the world in his own unique way. One of the most beautiful things about Karl was how deeply he listened. You could talk to him about anything, your dreams, your fears, your wildest ideas, and he'd really hear you. It wasn't about waiting for his turn to speak, it was about you in the moment being understood. That rare gift made people feel safe around him, seen and truly valued. He was fiercely loyal to his friends. If you were in Karl's circle, you had someone who would stand beside you no matter what. And his circle, it was wide and welcoming, full of people from every walk of life, drawn in by his music, his warmth, and his open-hearted presence. I remember asking him once when we were young if he ever got nervous playing in front of big crowds. He smiled and said, "Yeah, sometimes, but once I start playing, the nervousness is gone." And that was Karl. The music was his home and his calm. His life was full of the unexpected and the unforgettable. One time I dropped by his place unannounced and found a New York tap dancer visiting, a man who would dance with the legendary Cab Calloway. You never knew who you'd meet. Another memory I cherish, one Saturday afternoon, my friends and I went to see him jam at a club, and in walked the incredibly talented Maria Mulder. She had met Karl somewhere, naturally, and ended up singing on stage with him. That was the kind of magic that just seemed to follow Karl around. And then there was the launch of his CD, Everyone Wants to Be a Cat. Karl put me in charge of the door. It was an invite only. At one point, this lovely girl came up without an invite and told me she'd just forgotten hers, but that she was Karl's sister. I laughed and said, "Well, our mom would love to meet you, because I'm his sister too." Her boldness and her story made me laugh so hard that she was a shoo-in. Karl was many things: a son, a brother, a father, an uncle, and a friend. And above all, he was a man who loved deeply. In 1981, Karl married Susan in Vienna, Austria. Together they brought two wonderful children into the world, Nicole and Sasha. Children who were blessed not just with loving parents, but with the gift of two warm, supportive households, even across countries. What could have been a challenge became a privilege, thanks to the grace, maturity, and unwavering commitment that Karl and Susan brought to parenting. They never stopped being a team when it came to their children. Holidays weren't divided, they were shared. Family always came first, a value Karl held close, just as our own parents had done before us. That harmony, that genuine partnership is rare and deeply admirable. But Karl made space for that. His humility, his generosity of spirit, his ability to find common ground, those were his quiet superpowers. Whether it was over long conversations, family dinners, or unexpected jam sessions, Karl's presence brought steadiness and light. His laughter could fill a room. His love for his kids, his family, and his friends ran deep and true. Rest peacefully, Karl. You will always be with us in our stories, our traditions, and in the hearts of your children, who are the greatest reflection of the man you were. We'll miss him dearly, but his music, his laughter, and his big, generous heart will echo on in all of us. Thank you, Karl. You'll always be our one of a kind. Nikki and Alex.
All right. For those of you who haven't met me tonight yet or don't know who I am, I'm Karl's daughter, Nicole. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about not music stuff that you may have not known about my dad. So that was a big car guy. His favorite car was the 1970s XJ Series Jaguar. Apparently only the first and third versions, because the second version wasn't so good, because Jaguar went downhill in the 70s because of not so good takeover. That's something you know now. Staying on the topic of cars, he was an excellent driver, one of the best, probably the best I've ever known. And he was the one who gave me my first driving lesson, which was driving donuts in a winter parking lot. It was awesome. Super cool. Again, cars, here we go. He was a cab driver when Alex and I were very, very young. He'd actually take us to a restaurant in Chinatown called Hang Fang, which apparently had really great noodles. I was a bit too young to remember if they were great or not, but my lifelong love of Chinese food probably indicates that they were pretty awesome. Let's see. He was actually also very well versed in politics, and that's an interest that Alex and I both inherited from him. So we had some very interesting, very heated discussions at the dinner table. And yeah, actually, Annette already touched on this, but even though his marriage with Mom didn't work out, they never fought over us, not even once, and they remained really good friends up until the end. Overall, I had a good relationship with Dad. It wasn't perfect, which relationship is. And we butted heads on a lot of things because, as his daughter, I am similar to him in a lot of ways, but I'm also very different in a lot of ways. But there was one thing that always stood out to me about my dad, no matter what difficulties we had, and he was authentically himself. And it's this authenticity that gave him his magnetic personality that touched so many people. It takes a lot of courage to live as our authentic selves in a society that oftentimes is very punishing of those who do while rewarding conformity. Therefore, I can say with certainty that, even though it did cost him dearly in certain ways, my dad was a courageous man. I believe that it was this authenticity, fueled by courage, that he expressed through his music, and why it had such an enduring and positive effect on many. So if my dad had an effect on you, and you would like to honor his life and legacy, you can do so by finding the courage to live up authentically, even if it's just 1% more every day. I'm sure Dad would be glad to know that he had such a lasting positive effect on your life. Thank you.
Hello. I'd like to keep it brief. I'll miss his laughter, I'll miss his music, and I'll miss his conversation, and he will be missed.
If there's any stories about Dad you would like to share, please come on up. Otherwise, I'm going to turn